Okay, before you file taxes this year, really before any time you go to do a serious review of your books on the monthly basis or quarterlies, you want to make sure you're up to date. There's tons of possibilities of things going wrong, but I'm going to talk about one that's very common and very insidious because it causes you to pay more in taxes because of silly goofs on the books. And what I'm talking about is duplicated revenue, which trickles down right to a fat or bottom line, which we all want to be profitable, right? But only if that's real. For one, filing taxes, but go a little deeper. You want to make the best business decisions you can. And if you're looking at wrong data, then you're going to make wrong decisions, probably. So let's avoid that. What I want to look at today is your financial statements, your income statement, your P&L, and your balance sheet, okay? Both must be looked at on a regular basis because if something lands on one but belongs on the other, they're both wrong. So in this case, consequences are paying too much in taxes because of a fat bottom line when we can see where the issue is on the balance sheet. Let's take this one example and look at a few scenarios. There could be infinite possibilities, but let's take a look best we can at what we're talking about here. Okay, so on your balance sheet, I want you to look for, here, let's come up and over here. Okay, you're in your QuickBooks file here. Go on over to reports. You'll find your profit and loss, your income statement, and your balance sheet. Okay, look at your balance sheet. And okay, first things first, let's make sure we're looking at the right date range. So let's look at last year, for instance. Okay, so as of December 31st, these are our balances. Alrighty, so the culprit of this insidious duplicated revenue, which leads to inflated profits, which leads to a higher tax bill, is possibly here. You want to make sure your checking account and your savings account are all reconciled, make sure those are good to go properly. But let's look at these other ones here. We've got undeposited funds and uncategorized asset. Maybe the issue is found in accounts receivable. So you can see this one example already leads to several different possibilities. And troubleshooting each one could be any number of fixes too. But let's dive in a little bit just to see some examples. And before we get too far into this, I just want to bring this up here. This is what I call the revenue process, okay? So this is when you invoice your customers and they pay you at a later date. You track the invoice in accounts receivable, you receive the payment, and then deposit that. So those are the three major steps you can see there up top, and you can see, if you want to pause the video and see what else is happening here, there's stuff happening. You know, stuff is moving and shaking all over the place. But it's in this that a lot of this, like I said, it's very common for this issue to come up. So we want to make sure the invoice is recorded correctly, payments are received and applied against those invoices, and finally with that check that you have sitting in undeposited funds, right? You take that and put it into the bank account. But what else can happen? We saw that uncategorized asset. That sounds kind of goofy, right? The bank accounts themselves could be wrong, or maybe the accounts receivable is just wrong. So we got to make sure all this is right. So you, in this tax time, are filing on the right information and being able to make the best decisions you can. So let's look at some stuff here. Where this oftentimes happens is the bank feed. Let's start there. Let's see what's happening here. And how could we possibly duplicate revenue, right? Okay, so let's look here. So this is your bank feed. The bank feed is a great efficiency tool. It by itself is not bookkeeping. It helps bridge the gap between no entries and making the entries happen. It can really speed up, but it also can cause problems. In this case, we're looking at duplicating revenue, like I've mentioned. So we have a list here of different stuff. So mostly we're talking about this column over here. Notice this one expense or this one outflow here. Let's get rid of that. Let's just match that. Let's assume that one's good. So we're looking at only inflows. And we can see there's a couple matches here. So that sounds good, right? Let's inspect a little bit. Let's see what a correct entry looks like. Okay, so let's go into this deposit and notice that this one deposit, right, this one line item in your bank account is made up from, in this case, 5 different customers' payments. All these green check marks is adding up to this total. So these are all, what this is a window into your undeposited funds. So all the list of payments that your customers have made, you want to make sure that that's categorized correctly and those payments are accounted for as far as the deposit goes. So this one looks good. So let's match it, okay? You want to make sure the details are correct. But what about this next one? My goodness. Here it is. This is how we could possibly duplicate revenue. So we have a line item here, and we think, okay, back, gosh, around Christmas time, I deposited some money for $408. It was for not uncategorized income, some other kind of income. Let's say it was for some design invoices. All right, so design income sounds good. Let's hit the button. That's it. That's how duplicated revenue happens, because that wasn't new revenue. There were existing invoices to match those two. So let's undo that. Okay, let's go into your categorized portion here and find that $408 deposit right here and undo that. Okay, we're gonna get rid of that. And so now it's back here. So let's see what happens. Let's revisit that undeposited funds bucket. Find that by +new and bank deposit. And looky here, we have a payment from Amy's Bird Sanctuary for $108 and from John Melton for $300. There is our $408. So if we put this into the correct account around that same date, let's see, December 23rd, and hit save and close, now there's a record on QuickBooks for us to match to. And looky here, there's a nice, beautiful green match button right there. So now this bank deposit is matched up to those payments, which go back to those invoices. We are not duplicating revenue here. Okay, so that's kind of talking about undeposited funds, but let's talk about something else. We also have this uncategorized asset that has some number in it. Why does it have numbers in it? Let's take a look. If we want to go into here, we can see a couple things that look familiar, but why is it going to uncategorized asset? Okay, so we got to fix it. So we can always go back into these records and point it back directly. So here's a received payment that was booked into uncategorized asset. That's why this one shows up there. So best bet 99% of the time is to default this to undeposited funds. So let's go ahead and do that. Undeposited. Okay, there it shows up. And let's close that one. We'll save and close. And now that one goes away. So we're clearing out uncategorized asset. Okay, let's do the same thing for here, probably. A sales receipt that went into uncategorized asset. Let's change that to undeposited funds. So remember, it's in the bucket that we can look into now, right? Okay, so that's all cleared out. Let's back out of here. Okay, our balance sheet looks better. There's no uncategorized asset there. Let's go back into that undeposited funds window by +new bank deposit. And we have those items right here. Here's one. And then the sales receipt, this one right there. Those are new. All right, but let's take a look at what we're dealing with here. Here's the bank feed again. Let me see if I can make the green button appear. Let me see. So if I go out of this and kind of come back, there we go. Okay, so now the bank feed recognizes there's a sales receipt sitting in undeposited funds. That's a pretty good match to bring it into this as a deposit. So you can go ahead and do that. That's a good match. Here for this payment, see, we've seen a few different words. We've seen deposit, sales receipt, and now payment as far as the description goes. So you could take a look at it if you want to. From payment to deposit, which is what we're going to do when we hit this button, is fine. You can also manually go in and actually make a deposit here. You know, for this particular one, change the date, you know, to what the actual thing is. And no, that's not the right one. Not that one. Not that one. Here we go. Cool cars. All right, for $694. And now we have a deposit record here. Not a payment, but a deposit. So this is all tracking good. We have the invoice, the payment, now the deposit. Okay, going back to that first screen I showed you. Okay, so that's a little bit into the area of duplicated revenue, leading to inflated profit, which means a higher tax bill for you. So make sure your balance sheet is good before filing taxes. You might save some money, especially if there's duplicated revenue. So look at those few things. There's accounts receivable, undeposited funds, uncategorized asset, plus who knows whatever else. Books will change company by company, but there's a few steps for you to get started to make sure that you're not paying too much in taxes. If I can be of any help to you, please reach out. go to my website, heartsystemsbookkeeping.com, fill out a form there, email me, whatever you'd like to do. I want to save you some money, and I want you to have a great year. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.